Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We're cutting through the headlines today to look at a really complex diplomatic situation. We've got Australia, Iran, and Israel all involved.
Yeah, it's quite the storm. A recent diplomatic earthquake, you could say. It sent shock waves, really, drawing in multiple players with some pretty grave accusations and, well, surprising claims, too.
Absolutely. So our mission today is clear. Dive deep into the details we have from our sources. We're talking official statements, intelligence claims, diplomatic reactions
No.
to help you understand the full picture, the layers of claims and counterclaims and the really critical nuances here.
And what's fascinating right off the bat is the immediate, almost explosive reaction from all sides. This isn't just like a simple dispute between two countries. It's multifaceted, it escalated incredibly quickly, and involves nations with, let's say, deeply entrenched perspectives.
So our goal, lay out the facts, the different views as they're presented in the sources we've got.
Exactly. No taking sides, just equipping you, the listener, with a clear, impartial understanding of what went down, what everyone's claiming, so you can weigh it all up yourself.
All right, let's jump right in then. The spark that kicked this whole thing off.
Okay.
It started Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He made a profoundly serious statement.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Pretty stark language.
He said Australia reached, and I'm quoting here, the deeply disturbing conclusion based on credible intelligence.
Credible intelligence, right? That's key.
That Iran's government had directed at least 2 attacks against Australia's Jewish community. Specific locations mentioned, Sydney and Melbourne.
Wow. Directed is a strong word from a government.
And it wasn't just words, the immediate, very real consequence. Australia ordered Iran's ambassador, Ahmad Sadeghi, to leave the country, expelled.
Okay, yeah. Expelling an ambassador.
So for our listeners who follow this stuff, credible intelligence, a diplomatic expulsion on this scale, it implies something huge, doesn't it? What does that signal?
Oh, absolutely. This isn't, just a strongly worded letter or a minor diplomatic disagreement.
No.
Expelling an ambassador, especially when it's linked to intelligence claims of state-directed attacks on your own soil. I mean, that's about as severe as it gets, short of, well, military action.
Right. It signifies a massive breakdown in trust.
A profound loss of trust, yeah. It highlights just how serious and probably how irrefutable Australia believed that intelligence was. And our sources really underscore that chain reaction it set off immediately.
Yeah.
Australia kicks out the ambassador.
Iran vows reciprocal action.
And Australia publicly points the finger at Iran. This isn't just political posturing. It's a high-stakes gamble, indicating a fundamental shift in how Australia views Iran, driven by what they clearly see as undeniable proof.
Okay, so that's the initial bombshell. But just as you're kind of processing the weight of that, the plot, well, that thickens quite a bit with a really surprising claim from Israel.
Yes, this part. Almost immediately after Australia's announcement, an Israeli government spokesperson, David Mencer, steps up. First, he commends Australia, for taking threats seriously against the Jewish community. Standard enough, maybe.
Okay.
But then Mencer goes way further.
Yeah.
He explicitly claims Australia's decision came after what he called a forthright intervention from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
A forthright intervention. He actually claimed Netanyahu pushed Albanese.
He did. Mencer didn't hold back. He asserted Netanyahu had, quote, made very forthright comments about the Australian Prime Minister himself because Netanyahu apparently felt Albanese did not believe that the actions of the Australian government had gone anywhere near far enough to address the issues of anti-Semitism. That's quite a public claim of influence, isn't it?
It really is. Does the source material give us any clues about why Israel might make such a public claim like that, especially given it could, cause friction with Australia?
Well, this is where the context becomes absolutely critical, and our sources do provide some really important background. It turns out, just the week before, Netanyahu had actually accused Albanese quite directly of being a weak politician who betrayed Israel and abandoned Australia's Jews.
Wow. Okay, so there was already serious tension.
Exactly. And that comment came just days after Albanese announced Australia was planning to formally recognize a Palestinian state in September.
Right. The timing.
The timing is everything here. So this prior accusation, this backdrop of tension over Palestine, it provides a very clear potential context for Mencer's intervention claim.
So Israel might be trying to frame this as them successfully pressuring Australia.
It certainly looks like a possible interpretation. The ABC article covering this was blunt. The headline was something like, Israeli government claims credit for pushing Albanese to expel Iranian diplomats.
Hmm.
What's fascinating is thinking about how that public assertion of influence coming from a close ally might land. Not just, a friendly nudge, but maybe a strategic move to shape the narrative. Or even keep pressure on Australia, especially with that recent disagreement over the Palestinian state.
That sequence is really something. Netanyahu calls Albanese weak over Palestine, then claims his forthright intervention led to this action on Iran and anti-Semitism. It just highlights that underlying tension.
Definitely.
But how did Australia take this very public claim that Israel basically made them do it?
Well, they shut it down. Hard.
Oh.
Australia's Minister for Home Affairs, Tony Burke, he was on ABC Radio.
Yeah.
And when asked directly about Israel claiming credit for the expulsion, he called it complete nonsense.
Complete nonsense. Okay, that's pretty direct.
Very direct.
Yeah.
Not just a quiet disagreement behind the scenes. This was a public slapdown between two countries that are usually pretty close allies.
Yeah.
Especially about the reason for such a major diplomatic move.
What's the significance of that? A public argument like this between partners?
It's incredibly telling, isn't it? I mean, allies disagree internally all the time, but to publicly contradict your partner on the motivation for a major policy decision, that signals a real strain. It really suggests Australia felt it was vital to push back, to assert their own independence and agency here, maybe to counter any idea that their actions were driven by external pressure rather than their own intelligence.
Right, they needed to own the decision.
Precisely. And this kind of public dispute, well, it can definitely complicate things down the line, cooperation-wise. It just shows how, even among close friends, you don't always get a single unified story. And who gets the credit or the blame can become a real sticking point.
Okay, so Australia versus Israel on the why. But this whole thing started with Iran. We need to get to their side of the story.
Absolutely. The third major player here, and their response was, well, probably predictable in its forcefulness.
Which was?
In absolute total denial. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman, Esmail Baghai, he absolutely rejected Australia's accusations about directing attacks.
Okay, denial expected. Did they offer any explanation?
They did.
Yeah.
They didn't just deny, they offered a pretty sharp counter-argument. Baghai suggested that Australia's claims and the expulsion came conveniently after Australia had offered some, quote, limited criticism of Israel.
Linking it back to Israel again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He went further, suggesting, and this is his quote, "It seems that this action is taken in order to compensate for the limited criticism the Australian side has directed at the Zionist regime Israel."
Okay, Zionist regime, that's standard language from Iran regarding Israel, carries its own weight.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
It highlights that deep ideological divide. And as you'd expect, Iran finished with a clear warning. A reciprocal reaction was coming for any inappropriate and unjustified action on a diplomatic level.
So what's the strategy behind that counter-accusation? Deny and then blame Australia's relationship with Israel?
It looks like a classic diplomatic move in this kind of high-tension situation, sort of tit-for-tat escalation.
Right.
Iran's strategy seems twofold. First, obviously, firmly deny everything, maintain their position. Second, and maybe more strategically, reframe Australia's actions.
How so?
Make it seem not like a response to genuine intelligence, but like a political maneuver designed to appease Israel.
Trying to undermine Australia's credibility.
Exactly. It attempts to delegitimize Australia's intelligence claims, portray them as bowing to pressure, and sort of shift the moral high ground, It cleverly uses those existing tensions between Australia and Israel over Palestine as leverage.
And the warning of a reciprocal response.
Standard signaling of resolve. Don't mess with us.
Oh, yeah.
It just illustrates how complex this gets. Multiple layers, prior grievances influencing interpretations, every move calculated for its wider impact.
So Australia points at Iran based on intelligence. Israel claims they pushed Australia. Australia says nonsense. Iran denies and points back at Australia and Israel.
It's a tangled web.
And there was even more commentary flying around, wasn't there? Adding more fuel to the fire.
There was. Alana Lenk, she's the spokesperson and head of public diplomacy at Israel's embassy in Canberra.
Okay.
She was active on social media, shared Australian newspaper front pages, the ones with those stark headlines like Iran attacks us and Iran targets Bondi Delhi.
Right, very visceral images.
And her comment alongside them was pretty strong. "We warned Iran wouldn't stop with Israel or the Jewish people. The West is next isn't just a slogan, and today Australia sees it."
So framing it as "we told you so," essentially, a broader existential threat.
That's the message, yeah. Connecting these specific alleged attacks directly to that wider narrative.
But amidst all this state-level back and forth, we also heard from the community directly affected by these allegations in Australia, didn't we?
Yes, and this perspective is absolutely crucial and maybe the most nuanced one we encountered. The Jewish Council of Australia released a statement.
What did they say?
Well, first they acknowledged they were, quote, shocked to learn of the Iranian government involvement in coordinating anti-Semitic attacks. So taking the allegations seriously.
Okay.
However, and this is where the nuance is so important, the council added a really significant point. They said, the fact that a foreign government appears to be responsible shows how irresponsible it was for the attacks to be used to demonize the Palestine solidarity protest movement.
Wow. Okay, so they're drawing a very clear line there.
A very clear line. They're saying, yes, this specific allegation about Iran is shocking, but don't use it to tarnish a completely separate movement.
And did they say anything else?
They did. They issued a direct call to action. We call on politicians and the media to exercise caution and to avoid politicization of these attacks in a way that could further harm the Jewish community.
That's incredibly insightful, isn't it? What does that tell us about how the community itself is processing this?
It's a really profound call for responsible dialogue, especially in such a heated atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
While they're clearly acknowledging the seriousness of the Iran allegations, the Jewish Council is explicitly pushing back against what can be an easy and often damaging tendency to conflate things.
Right, conflating these specific claims with broader, unrelated issues like the Palestine solidarity movement.
Exactly. It highlights their concern that while they want accountability for these alleged attacks, the narrative shouldn't then be twisted to unfairly demonize other groups. That could just sow more division and, ironically, potentially put the Jewish community itself at further risk.
So it's a plea for carefulness.
For discernment, caution, yeah. Urging politicians and the media not to let the pursuit of justice for these specific alleged acts become a weapon for broader political attacks or scapegoating.
That's a really key takeaway. It shows the community leadership grappling with the complexities, pushing for healing and responsibility over knee-jerk politicization.
It really does. It's a powerful reminder that these aren't just abstract geopolitical games. They have immediate real-world impacts on communities.
Right.
And often, those communities are calling for a more measured, thoughtful approach than some of the state-level rhetoric might suggest.
So where does this leave us, and more importantly, where does it leave you, the listener, trying to make sense of these complex global events? We've definitely navigated a tangled web today. You've got Australia's intelligence-backed claims, the ambassador expulsion, then Israel jumping in, claiming influence.
Which Australia then flatly denied.
Right, complete nonsense. Then Iran's absolute rejection, pointing fingers back at Australia and Israel, suggesting political motives.
And finally, that really vital, nuanced perspective from the Jewish Council of Australia.
Yeah, shocked by the allegations, but urging everyone not to politicize them.
Exactly.
So our mission here, as always, was to lay all that out for you. Distill the key claims from all sides, present these competing narratives so you can process it, evaluate it critically without us telling you what to think.
And that really leads us to a final thought, something to maybe mull over, building directly on that wisdom from the Jewish Council.
Okay.
In this world we live in, right? Information overload, crazy geopolitical tensions, immediate impacts on communities.
Mm-hmm.
How do societies actually balance that need for security, for accountability,
Mm-hmm.
with the very real risk of politicizing sensitive community issues?
Mm.
And in doing that, maybe fueling even more division.
That's a huge challenge, and it goes way beyond just this one incident.
It really does. So we just encourage you, as you follow these stories, to keep practicing that critical thinking. Seek out those nuanced community voices, sometimes drowned out by the louder state-level arguments.
Yeah.
When you're faced with these high-stakes international accusations and all the different, often conflicting perspectives they bring up,